1,500 years ago, an Indian monk took up residence in a cave on Mount SONGSHAN. His name was Bodhidharma. And after 9 years of meditation, he emerged to found a new school of Buddhism, Chan, otherwise known as Zen. Later, under the Tang Dynasty, Buddhism was suppressed, yet Mount SONGSHAN continued to play a central role in religion. So, what was its appeal to Taoists? Please stay tuned for Part 4 of Mount SONGSHAN.
In the early spring of the year 64 AD, a meteor was seen streaking across the sky above the city of Luoyang. 16 days later, Empress Dowager Yin Lihua, the mother of Emperor Ming of Han, died. The events left the emperor filled with fear. It was a chaotic time. Han was constantly at war, human life counted for little, and the people were living in fear. Against this backdrop, a new religion promoting tolerance and wisdom was quietly making inroads into China from the West. It was Buddhism. One night, Emperor Ming had a strange dream in which he saw a golden man 30 meters tall surrounded by a halo of light descending from the sky. The emperor asked his ministers what the dream might mean, and one of them told him that the man was the Buddha from India. The emperor dispatched an envoy who invited two eminent monks, Kasyapa and Dharmalan, to come to China. The emperor had a temple built for the two monks. Bai Ma Temple, or White Horse Temple, is located in Luoyang at the western foot of Mount SONGSHAN. In the course of the next 100 years, Buddhism was embraced by China's upper classes. They began referring to Buddhism in the same breath as Taoism, a religion that was indigenous to China. In the year 495, Xiaowen, Emperor of Northern Wei, moved his capital to Luoyang, and with that, the city once again became the political, economic and cultural center of China. The emperor brought an Indian monk Madra to his new capital. Madra had arrived in China several years earlier, and he had converted the entire Northern Wei imperial family to Buddhism. At the time, Mount SONGSHAN was officially recognized as the center of the earth. Madra realized that from such a key location, he had the perfect opportunity to promote the spread of Buddhism right across China. He told his followers that a divine guardian dwelled on the mountain, and that guardian would continue to protect them if they were to build a monastery in his honor there. And so Shaolin Temple was built. But still, most ordinary Chinese had never heard of Buddhism. It would be a further 30 years before the efforts of another Indian monk, Bodhidharma, popularized Buddhism across the whole of China's territory. Bodhidharma came to prominence in the early 6th century. With his broad knowledge and refinement, he was a favorite of Emperor Wu of the Liang dynasty. By this time, 480 Buddhist temples had been established south of the Yangtze River. But Bodhidharma was convinced that only if Buddhism spread to the Central Plains region, the heartland of Chinese civilization, could it make a real impact. Bodhidharma spent 9 years in isolation meditating in a cave on Mount SONGSHAN. When he emerged, he founded the Chan or Zen school of Buddhism.
那么从东汉开始，法王寺建立之后，嵩山就成为中国佛教上的一个重要的传播圣地，尤其是南北朝。嵩山成为中国佛教上的一个传播的中心。嵩山的重要的寺院，像圣道寺、法王寺、嵩岳寺等等，都是在北魏的时候建造的。北魏的时期可以说是嵩山佛教上的一个最鼎盛的一个时期。那么，尤其是北魏的时候，菩提达摩来到嵩山传禅了以后，嵩山成为中国禅宗的这个发祥地。
As the influence of Buddhism spread, so numerous monasteries and pagodas were built. Mount SONGSHAN itself became the focus of a major construction effort. Its pagodas, built over a period of nearly 13 centuries, reveal multiple cultural influences.
佛教的话源于印度，在那个它也是印度苏都坡传过来的，但是在印度的话，它这圆寂了以后，它建立舍利塔，它是藏舍利，佛的舍利。到中国了以后，这个塔的话，从建筑形式上汉化，跟这个苏都坡的话大不一样。它这苏都坡实际就是个下头是个大圆钟，上头有个尖尖子和塔刹。到中国汉化了以后，跟中国楼阁式建筑结合起来了。所以说，这个塔体是楼阁，塔刹的话保留它苏都坡，所以说汉化了以后啊，中国的古代的这个匠师啊，是创造性的，发展了佛塔。
1500 years ago, an Indian monk took up residence in a cave on Mount SONGSHAN. His name was Bodhidharma. And after 9 years of meditation, he emerged to found a new school of Buddhism, Chan, otherwise known as Zen. Later, under the Tang dynasty, Buddhism was suppressed, yet Mount SONGSHAN continued to play a central role in religion. So, what was its appeal to Taoists? Please stay tuned for part 4 of Mount SONGSHAN.
The pagoda at Songyue Temple stands on the southern flank of Mount SONGSHAN, where it is surrounded by trees. Built during the Northern Wei dynasty 1,400 years ago, it is the country's oldest surviving Buddhist pagoda. But this is not its only claim to fame.
这个12个边呢，在中国古塔里边，这又是独一份的啊。现在好像其他记载的地方有，但是真正见到的，这个他发表资料的还是没有见到。12边形呢就接近圆形啊，接近圆形。从这个角度上考虑呢，它也是比较容易保存的，比较安全。它那个角度啊， 不是太锐角，它是很抹的这个角啊，所以说抗震性能也是比较好的。清华大学梁思成先生，他就在他的著作里边称这个塔呢是中国密檐式塔的鼻祖啊，鼻祖。而且这种塔的出现呢，也是一个奇迹啊。这一个呢，我觉得在中国这个建筑史上，在中国的这个造塔史上，它都是有特殊意义重要的价值。
The stupa forest at Shaolin Temple is the burial ground of the temple's most eminent monks. The 282 surviving stupas date from the Tang, Song, Jin, Yuan, Ming and Qing dynasties, a period covering 1,000 years. The stupa's designs vary according to the era when they were erected. Some of them are of the traditional multiple eaves type, while others are typical of Tibetan Buddhism. They provide a general picture of how Buddhism developed in China, and they also offer an insight into the cultural exchanges that took place between China and other countries, particularly how the Buddhist architecture of China's central plains fused with that of the western regions and India. Also on the southern flank of Mount SONGSHAN, but at the foot of Junji Peak by the Shuangxi River, there's a peaceful complex of buildings. This is the famous Songyang Academy, originally part of Songyang Temple. The temple was built in 484 AD on the orders of the Northern Wei Emperor Xiaowen. A devout Buddhist, he was determined to see Buddhism spread to the central plains. To encourage this, he ordered that a temple be built on Mount SONGSHAN, not far from his new capital, Luoyang. A stone monument stands in the temple compound, inscribed with Buddhist images and writings. Erected in the year 535, it is a reminder of Songyang Temple's golden age. History of the Wei dynasty states that there were 30,000 Buddhist temples within the territory of Northern Wei. More than 1,000 of them were located on and around Mount SONGSHAN. Buddhism was developing rapidly in China. People were being converted in large numbers, and splendid temples and grottos were being filled with magnificent Buddhist art. The imperial family's devotion to Buddhism encouraged others to convert. In China, under the Northern Wei dynasty, there were believed to be at least 50,000 Buddhist monks and nuns. Princess Yongtai, the younger sister of Emperor Xiaoming, became a nun, and she had a hut specially built for herself on Mount SONGSHAN. This hut was later expanded and became Yongtai Temple. Yongtai Temple was the first Buddhist nunnery built after the establishment of the Zen school in China. As for Bodhidharma, he lived in seclusion at the foot of Wuru Peak. Several centuries after his death, Chuzu Temple was built on the same spot. The main hall, dating from 1126, is typical of the official architectural style of the Song dynasty, as detailed in the text Yingzhao Fa Shi, or Building Standards. The book Building Standards was published in the year 1103. This comprehensive work detailing the rules of building design and construction was the official guide to construction in the Song dynasty.
由于建筑法式这部专著和出租案的建筑年代相错的话很近，并且又是的话，当时的宋代的都城东京离登封的话，这个距离也近，是经济之地。所以说的话，这部这个出租案大典的话，就被国内的学者的话，评价为研究营造法式的最好标本。你从建造年代和成熟时间，从来的话，当时这个经济地位，并且这部营造法式的作者当时是江作赇、李杰，李杰就是郑州人，所以说这一切的一切都把这个出租案大典和营造法式的话研究结合起来。
1500 years ago, an Indian monk took up residence in a cave on Mount SONGSHAN. His name was Bodhidharma. And after 9 years of meditation, he emerged to found a new school of Buddhism, Chan, otherwise known as Zen. Later, under the Tang dynasty, Buddhism was suppressed, yet Mount SONGSHAN continued to play a central role in religion. So, what was its appeal to Taoists? Please stay tuned for part 4 of Mount SONGSHAN.
For several generations after his death, Bodhidharma's followers simplified the tenets of Zen Buddhism to make it more accessible to the common people. Eventually, Buddhism, despite being a foreign religion, was widely accepted in China. Buddhist law and secular law were integrated. Zen Buddhism is imbued with many elements of Chinese philosophy and culture. It came to represent the localization of Buddhism in China. Buddhism today remains a key integral part of and conveyor of traditional Chinese culture. Throughout the centuries, Buddhism's development was heavily influenced by the policies of successive rulers. In the early Tang period, Empress Taizong and Empress Wu Zetian actively supported Buddhism. When the monk Xuanzang returned from his mission to fetch Buddhist scriptures from India, Emperor Taizong held a ceremony to welcome him. The emperor even gave himself the title Imperial Disciple of Buddha. On his deathbed, he discussed Buddhist teachings with the great monk. Empress Wu Zetian donated 20,000 strings of coins for the construction of SONGSHAN Temple in Luoyang. Later in the Tang dynasty, however, Emperor Xuanzong adopted a policy of restraint aimed at maintaining a degree of control over the pace of Buddhism's spread. Buddhism flourished again in the early 9th century under Emperor Xuanzong. When bone relics of the Buddha were brought to China, the emperor held a ceremony to mark the occasion. However, within a few decades, during the reigns of Xuanzong's grandsons Wenzong and Wuzong, Buddhism entered a period of rapid decline. Finally, in the year 846, Emperor Wuzong launched a campaign to purge the country of Buddhism. All Buddhist temples were destroyed, and all the monks and nuns were forced to renounce their vows. With Buddhism in decline, Taoism began to prosper again. Over 1300 years earlier, in 518 BC, when the Zhou dynasty was in crisis, a man named Lao Tzu was caught up in the political turmoil and dismissed from his post as curator of the Imperial Library. He fled the capital on an ox. When he reached Hangul Pass, just south of the Yellow River, he was stopped by the garrison commander Guan Yin. Guan Yin was impressed by Lao Tzu's philosophical ideas, and he begged him to put them down in writing. The result was the Dao De Jing, or Scripture of Ethics, an analysis of the successes and failures of the various monarchical eras in Chinese history. It became the theoretical basis of Taoism. Zhongyue Temple is the largest ancient building complex on any of China's 5 sacred mountains. The present structure dates from the Qing dynasty and stands on the site of what was originally the Taishe Shrine. One admirer has described the temple thus: flying wild geese block the sunlight, gorgeous towers reach the clouds. A story is told about the Taoist monk Kou Qianzhi, who early in the 5th century AD achieved enlightenment on Mount SONGSHAN. As a young man, Kou Qianzhi had studied the teachings of Zhang Lu, the 3rd century Taoist master. Later, he studied meditation under Master Chengxing, whom he accompanied to Mount SONGSHAN to collect medicinal herbs. Kou decided to stay on the mountain, where he practiced Taoism for more than 30 years under the guidance of Li Puwen, a descendant of Lao Tzu. Kou Qianzhi promoted the reform of Taoism and founded the Bei Tianshi Dao, or Northern Celestial Master School. Not long afterwards, Lu Xiaojing founded the Nan Tianshi Dao, or Southern Celestial Master School. But it was the Northern School that exerted the most profound influence on the development of Taoism. Taoists believe there are 5 sacred mountains in China where the 5 great monarchs dwell. The greatest of them is the Yellow Emperor, who lives on Mount SONGSHAN. In the ancient Taoist text, the Yunji Qiqian, or 7 Slips of the Cloudy Satchel, it's recorded that the chieftains acclaimed Xuanyuan as the Yellow Emperor. He lived in the central area and ruled the land from there. The Yellow Emperor is of course worshipped as the founder of the Chinese nation. Because Mount SONGSHAN was believed to stand at the center of the earth, and in view of the Yellow Emperor's key role in Taoism, it was natural that the mountain should be where Taoism became rooted. The Buddhist Songyang Temple had flourished under the Northern Wei dynasty, but under the Tang dynasty it became a Taoist temple. On the south side of the temple is a monument which bears an inscription. It is Ode to the Virtues of His Majesty of the Great Tang. Known as the Tang Monument, it was erected early in the year 745. It bears 25 lines of inscription, each consisting of 53 characters. The inscription tells the following story. Emperor Xuanzong of Tang fell seriously ill, and for a long time his physicians struggled to cure him. Learning that Sun Taichung, an eminent Taoist monk on Mount Songshan, could make immortality pills, the emperor sent an envoy to ask for some. The pills cured him, and to express his gratitude, the emperor sent another envoy to Mount Songshan with orders to erect a memorial tablet at Songyang Temple. The monument has 10 niches, 3 on the front, 3 on the back, and 2 on each side. Each niche contains carvings of warriors.
1,000 years ago, it was the most famous educational institution in China. Songyang Academy was at the heart of Confucian learning, and young men traveled from near and far to study there. Later, they would come to study at a very different institution, also on Mount Songshan, the Buddhist Shaolin Temple. So, how did Shaolin Temple gain its fame as the home of martial arts? Stay tuned for the 5th part of Mount Songshan.